conversation is we ask people to mute their microphone so that it's very easy for all of us to hear the principals and their answers. This is something that we know everyone is interested in hearing, but if everybody could at least do that, it will help with the audio of this evening. Okay, welcome to our second community conversation. Tonight, our panel includes three illustrious guests, and they are Mrs. Kelly Huggins, the principal of Newell Elementary School.
Hello.
Mrs. Stephanie Felino from Stonebridge Middle School, and Mrs. Connie Embley from Allentown High School. The purpose of our meeting tonight is to answer some of the questions that parents have. I will start the meeting off by saying that we expect most of your questions answered tonight, but also know that each of the principals has their own frequently asked questions on their page for their school that will answer a lot of the questions that parents have. It is a live document, so at any time you can go into that document and ask a question, and the principals are constantly perusing it so that they're aware of what your questions are and they're able to answer you in real time. So for that, I compliment them. Obviously, with schools opening in 2 weeks, it's very important that you have answers. We want to be as transparent as possible as a district. And I'm going to start off the night by asking all of them the same question. And that's sort of in the last, since March 16th, we have been either in a virtual setting or, preparing for an in-person setting here at in our district. And, what are some of the things that we've done so far to get prepared? Just generally, you don't have to speak about every little thing, but at each of your schools, if you think about some of the things that we've looked at, just as a general answer, what are some of those things that you've done? And Kelly, why don't you start?
Sure. Beginning with arrival of students, whether they're coming from the bus or whether they're going to be parent drop-off, and thinking about the measures that we're going to be taking to make sure that they're socially distancing, from having spray paint on our blacktop where they line up and making sure that each line is at least 6 to 8 feet in distance. When they're not permitted or able to line up outside because of weather, we also have tape on inside in the hallways with a spacing of 8 to 6 feet so that they're standing in the hall, naturally socially distancing with standing on the tape, the visible tape. We thought that was really important for our younger kids. We've gone through our classrooms and we've taken a look at what we need to do in order to make sure that desks are 6 feet apart from one another, and what else we can do with the setup of the room to ensure that the kids are going to be socially distancing from each other. We've talked about, we've talked all summer with the teachers. I don't think that they've had a summer really this summer, and we've worked through it. And we've been meeting weekly with the classroom teachers, talking about learning and what that's going to look like in the classroom, and really brainstorming and mapping out guidelines and expectations. We've also taken a very close look at what lunch and recess will look like when we do resume and start full days. And then, of course, dismissal and staggering dismissal times so that we don't have a number of kids coming out of the building all at once. Those are just very few pieces that we've been looking at. And it's been a very involved conversation with not only staff, but many parents and many committees, because what's most important to all of us is the health and safety of our students and our staff while still continuing our teaching and our calling.
Stephanie, how about you?
Sure, and I feel like I apologize on behalf of all of us if we in some ways are repetitive with our answers. We've been working very closely with one another, and I think you'll find that some of the steps we've taken to prepare are very similar. I think Connie will agree, and Kelly as well. The biggest thing for us was the schedule, looking at what we currently had in place and whether or not it would work for a hybrid model or an all virtual model. That was something that we started to work on as soon as the reopening committee decided on what the schedule would look like, we got to work and, breaking students down into cohorts, looking at our encore classes, taking the feedback from parents that we received from the March through June time period of going virtual, and making any modifications to the schedule given that feedback. I mentioned the reopening committee, so a lot of time was spent in meetings talking with parents, teachers, administrators, figuring out what steps we could put into place to make sure that our staff, our students, community members are as safe as possible. So we looked at individual classrooms, and then as the building as a whole. I think communication, was probably one of the biggest things this summer. We're working really hard to communicate with parents and making sure that they are up to date with everything they need to have in order to kind of make an informed decision as to whether or not their child should be attending virtually or in the hybrid model. So much like Kelly said, we're looking at a lot of those things. Those were just some of the other things that we were looking at this summer.
Great, thanks. Connie?
So again, as Stephanie just said, it is very repetitive. We've been all working so closely together and doing so many of the same things. I think we can all say how proud we were of our entire staff for the way we handled leaving on, when we left on March 13th. On March 16th, we started teaching. And, our students really did still get to receive their education. And we're all very proud of that. So I wasn't as concerned with them receiving their academic work as I was in preparing the building, for the safety of everyone, making sure we had a continuity of education with all of the different models, all really looking at how we can assure the social and emotional health of our students. Very difficult for high school students to be home and be out of school. Their whole lives revolve around all the activities that they are in all day. So we are doing all of the things that we can to assure that we can have a successful opening, remain open, make sure that the health and safety of everyone, our students and our staff, are paramount in every decision that we make. As far as their education goes, we do have a plan. We do expect there might be some glitches in it when now everyone is online and they're streaming from the building, but we're prepared with a really phenomenal technology department to be able to work out those things as they come and jump on them right away. And the last thing is just communication. We are constantly communicating with parents. I, at my level, get to communicate with the high school students also to inform them. We had student council members here today filming videos of how things will look different and how we expect them to, be conducting themselves and how temperatures will be taken. And there's a whole video we're going to put out of all the things that we do here. So we're able to communicate with the high school students and, have them be a part of the plan.
And that's something I think we hope everybody will understand, that things are going to definitely look different on day one. And they're going to look different on day one, and they may look different on day 30. And hopefully the idea will be that once a vaccine is found, therapeutics are a little bit more well off and numbers continue to drop, we're hoping to bring normalcy back as much as we possibly can in a safe way. And obviously we will let the medical professionals sort of help dictate that to us. But what you see on day one will be different than what it will look like moving forward. And ultimately, the number one goal for us is the safety of our staff and students, in making sure that they are as safe as possible. And certainly that is without a doubt the number one goal. So let's get to some of these questions. And I'm going to start off with the first one and hand it over to Connie, because it's sort of a high school question. How will busing work, including busing for sports to the tech schools? And in terms of busing in general, I'll just cover that real quickly. Each day, we anticipate approximately 37% of our kids to be in person. With that being said, not all of that 37% will be taking the buses. We expect our bus numbers to be much lower than typical, and we do expect some natural physical distancing to be able to happen. We will obviously require masks on the bus, and we are asking bus companies to make sure that they clean the buses after each run and disinfecting it for COVID. So that's just sort of a general response for that. But Connie, why don't you handle the sports and the tech question?
Okay. Also, we are going to be meeting with all the bus drivers on September 1st, all the principals and Mark. We're going to be meeting with the drivers. We're going to have an opportunity to really work out the details of the plan, and those will be included, I'm sure, in all of our welcome back letters and our information that is going to go home, right prior to school starting. For the high school, we need to still work with those bus drivers on the exact place of drop off so that we can avoid having, the parents also back up in traffic. So those are things, I know that's been a question out there, and I don't have the exact answer yet because I do need to meet with them to work on that plan, and then that information will be forthcoming. We do plan to, the vocational school students will still be transported to their schools. All students that go to the Mercer Votech school, they have just decided to go all virtual. That was last Thursday after literally hours and hours and hours of creating a schedule for them. We will, they're going virtual now. So now the transportation director in Millstone is working and notifying the parents of how that transportation will work. The students will either be, if they go in the morning, they'll be taken right from home there and then brought back here, and then, taken home from here also. If it's in the afternoon, they'll leave from here, just very similar to how it's been in the past. Any changes to that schedule, you will be notified. As far as sports go, we are going into a blackout period from NJSIA starting on Friday until September 14th. The preseason will start then, and then the season is going to start sometime after the first week of October. We do have scheduled to have buses to take our teams to away games. We will, socially distance those students on the bus. We will see if we need additional busing. Right now, we cannot really answer that fully. We're not sure. Some schools have dropped sports, so we don't know exactly who we're going to be playing and have that schedule. So, more information will be coming out about all of that as we get the information for the busing for sports. But again, that won't even be happening until October, until they're playing. So we do have some leeway on our side with coming up with those schedules and, the procedures and protocols.
All right, Steph, next question, we'll go to you with this one. It's a question that's for all three schools, but Steph, I'll let you answer it, and it's pretty much the same answer for everybody. If we're keeping kids home, and there's a few questions in our question line, if kids are being kept home because they have the stomach bug or they have, they get injured in some way and they're staying home like they normally would on a sick day, not COVID related, but they're staying home because they're not coming to school that day. Terrible allergies, their eyes are swollen, whatever it may be. Will the school grant them the ability to attend class virtually and have it not count as an absence?
Yes, absolutely. So you're really referring to the hybrid student here who typically would be in class. Let's say they're group 1, they should be attending Monday, Tuesday. It's right. Monday, they're home sick. If they are well enough to join classes virtually, we actually would prefer and urge students to do that. The only thing that I would kind of caution parents here is that it should not and cannot become a habit. If you've signed your child up for the hybrid model, we ask that they remain in that hybrid model. We're trying to have students, live in person with their teacher as much as possible. But we would absolutely welcome that. We would still ask that you follow the attendance procedures. So call in to make sure the building knows that your child will not actually be present in school, but that they are well enough to attend. You'll find that whether your child is live or virtual, if they're not in class when they should be, we're going to continue to call and reach out to make sure that your child is not, where they should be at that particular moment.
Great. Connie, what percentage of high school students opted for virtual only learning as opposed to the hybrid option, or at least the number?
Yeah, so there's 282 high school students out of over 1,170 students. It's about 24%.
Yeah, which is what pretty much the average in the school district is. About 25% overall decided to go virtual.
Uh-huh.
Kelly, how is kindergarten half day being handled? And are they going for an hour for the first month of school? How does virtual kindergarten work? In the past, the class size for half day was only 12 to 15 students. Why can't they go 5 days a week like pre-K?
Sure. A lot of good questions there. A lot of information will be coming out this week on our website for new parents to Newell Elementary School, specific to our kindergarten program, what a complement program looks like versus our half-day program, and really walking parents through the different features that each program offers. In addition to that, we typically held in the past kindergarten mini day. We are not holding that this year for obvious reasons, but I do believe the kindergarten team is working on some type of virtual meet and greet for parents, and that information will also be out later this week. Back to half-day kindergarten. Half-day kindergarten typically runs on a full day schedule. When everybody's a full day, their hours are 9 to 11:45. When we as a district are half days, the kindergarten program, the half-day kindergarten program is also then half of what their typical program is. And instead of going 9 to 11:45 on half days, the half-day kindergarten program goes until about 10:35, so 9 to 10:35. I'm working now with transportation to see if for the month of September, knowing that it's half days, if we can still keep the kindergarten children, the half-day kindergarten children, their regular time, which would be 9 to 11:45. So I think I answered the first question. The second question, as far as why can't our half-day kindergartners go 5 days a week, and that is based on numbers. Right now, enrollment in our half-day program is higher than it's been in years past, and we are up to, I believe, it's 21 students in our half-day program.
Thank you very much. And everybody, just so you know, there's going to be a lot more information sent out over the next 2 weeks with, finalizing some things. And there are, quite frankly, some things we're still trying to finalize to make sure that we have the very best plan in place. And we appreciate your patience with everything. Some of the answers you get tonight might be like, we're going to release that shortly because we're getting final approval from this person or that person, for the bus company, from, we just haven't heard back yet. So just be patient with us, and all that information will come out soon. Buses, as I said to you before, bus guidelines and cleaning procedures will be done in between each run. We have copies of the bus cleaning procedures that they have sent us. So we've asked them for that to make sure that they are in line with what's going on. Also, there's a question here for Life Touch Pictures, which is and they said the question may be trivial, but will there be a time when virtual students will be able to come into the school to take pictures? I don't remember having a conversation about that, but that doesn't mean the principals haven't already talked about it.
At the high school, we are planning to do that, and we will, get that date out to parents as soon as we have finalized that.
All right, Kelly, here's another question for you about advanced level math. At the end of the year, many of the things that we use to measure kids and to see if kids are ready for ALM, what are we doing with ALM math?
So ALM math will continue this year, and it will continue at the start of the school year with 4th grade. And the way that we will be doing ALM this year is different than what we've done in the past. And that is, instead of pulling kids from various homerooms, ALM is going to be delivered virtually into the classroom. And students will be meeting with their teacher virtually on a regular basis, and she will be delivering her instruction that way. There was a question about, isn't that going to be a little distracting for some of the other students? We will have headphones for our ALM students, and we have to wait and see how distracting it's going to be and to see how effective that model is. But right now, to be pulling students from various homerooms is really not recommended for the students and for the teacher.
Okay, great. Kelly, I'm sorry, this is another question for you, Cal, so get a sip of water. This one is basically referring to Orton Gillingham Basic Skills, LLI, and they specifically reference the elementary school. How are those basic skill students, how are they going to be addressed, and programs like Orton Gillingham and LLI?
Yep. Our plan is to continue with the supports that we've had in place last year that we know were effective with students. And what we're doing right now is looking at the number of students who are going to be in school in that hybrid model, identifying those basic skills so we know exactly how many numbers we're working with versus how many students are basic skills and need some of those supports, and they are opting for 100% virtual. So we're looking at those numbers, and we will continue to support the children in their learning, whether they're basic skills or not. And specifically those programs, our hope is to still continue those programs, but I'm not sure that that's going to happen, day one or day two or day three. I think that we will really have to take a look at September to see when we will be able to have those supports in place. And in some instances, those supports will be delivered virtually. And in other instances, they will be delivered one-on-one where children are masked, teachers are masked, and possibly wearing shields because they'll be in closer contact, but still with that 6-foot separation.
Great. This is a question that's a general question. Is there any plan to use the new designation of teachers as critical infrastructure workers to compel or force teachers who have been exposed and should be in quarantine to return to in-person teaching prior to their quarantine being complete if substitutes cannot be found? So I can answer that. We are absolutely not going to be bringing teachers back who should be in quarantine, and that is 100% firm on our part. We will never jeopardize their health, the health of others, or the health of students. And the same thing for us. We would expect students to remain in quarantine when needed to be, and that's something that, without a doubt, we would not go against any medical advice. And some of the medical advice we're getting are people that were on the panel at the last community conversation. We also reference and talk to the Department of Health. Lately, it seems like every day, and get some feedback from them. And we certainly have all the resources at our disposal for making decisions. And every case in our district will be dealt with individually. And there are a lot of questions out there, not necessarily in this forum, but that I've heard about what are we going to do about if one person gets it in this class and then 3 kids in another class. I'm going to be sending out something to the parents, and you can actually get it now from the Department of Health that really outlines in a very nice way sort of the what if scenarios. What if one student gets COVID? How is that handled? Does school have to close? Should school close? Should school not close? And then what happens if there's another case, but it's directly related to that original case? So there's a lot of conversations about it. What I would say to the community is this in terms of the individual situations. Last year, the entire state closed down from March 16th on for the rest of the year. And certainly if the state decided to do that again, we would not have any option but to do that, and we would follow that. If they continue to leave it up to the district, which is very challenging for any district, but if they decide to leave it up to the district, every case will be handled individually, and therefore decisions about school closure might not affect the entire district. It might affect a school. It might affect all 3 schools. It might be only 2-week shutdown. It might be a 3-week shutdown. It depends on the scenario and the situation that's presented to us. I don't anticipate at this time, obviously, and we know this is a moving situation, that we're going to be closing for an extended period of time as a result of COVID cases, unless there's some type of, Upper Freehold cluster or something like that. So that's going to be something that we're playing by ear, but all options are on the table, as you guys can only imagine. The district, what is the district plans for sports? And Connie, why don't you take this one? Regarding other districts canceling who they would play, and what if someone on the team tests positive?
Okay. So the plan for sports is we have since July been following the NJSIA return to play guidelines, and that has all gone very well. The marching band has been following suit in those same guidelines. There always was the plan for August 28th to September 14th to be the blackout period for all activities. There will be no school activities during that time. And then we will start the fall preseason until, sometime in October, where we would start to play. At this point, NJSIA believes that we will continue with the plan to play. Of course, at any time, they or the governor could pull that and determine that we are not playing any sports. I know that at the middle school level, there have been a lot of other schools that have dropped, and our own middle schools in consideration of what they're going to do, because there are not many schools left to play. We also have had some high schools drop sports that we play normally. They've dropped for this season. So we are, the schedules are in flux, but at this time, that is the plan. There is all safety precautions that have happened, and we are, continuing to follow them. If a student does test positive, we have a positive test for COVID, we certainly will follow all guidelines and make sure that we're making the decision based on the safety of everyone involved. Again, the health department is involved, and they will help us in making that decision. The student who was test positive, of course, that name is kept confidential, but we do let everyone know that was in the pod that they may be playing in, and everyone know that there was someone in that pod that tested positive. We also let the whole team know that while they may not have been in the pod, they may have been in contact with someone who tested positive. And then depending on the circumstances of the contact tracing and the circumstances of the exposure, we may make the decision to expand or to, stop just that sport, or, restrict that player, restrict that team, or restrict all of our teams, depending on the circumstances for, the 14 days until we are sure it is safe again.
Yeah, and just to add to Connie, at any time, the district can also pull the plug on sports, like some of the districts have done. Those are all conversations, and I quite honestly, we have these conversations on a daily basis, looking at new data, looking at everything that's out there in regards to what schools have done it thus far, where is there some type of outbreak here? But those are the types of things that we're still pondering. We want to have activities for our kids, that's for sure, but we want to do so in a very safe way. Stephanie, I'm going to jump to a question for you because I haven't heard your voice in a few minutes. So,
you poor thing.
Yeah, right. What will the protocol be for virtual students if Google Meet experiences outages, as we have seen from the start of online instruction for many districts across the country? Will live instruction be recorded for virtual students in case there are problems?
That's a very good question. That was brought up, and we saw it happen, at a number of times, March through June, and the idea of recording lessons was brought up, and is something that I think we as administration, we're still talking about and considering. I think it will be beneficial for students and really for teachers. For students who are absent, say, I wasn't there, I missed the lesson. A teacher can simply say, you can go ahead and check the recording. I think, as always, if a student is experiencing some tech issues, it's really important that he or she email the teacher to let him or her know that they're having those issues. It's not just a matter of a student not showing up for class. I think that communication is always important. And then, the fact that we use Google Classroom and that all of the material is housed in Google Classroom is also, opportunities for students to get whatever they missed, document-wise, and for them to catch up. And then, of course, there are always opportunities where teachers may work with students in much smaller groups, maybe at the end of the school day, or if they have an opportunity throughout the school day to catch a child up. So we will make sure that we're taking care of the kids, regardless of whether there's a tech issue or not, but absolutely during those tech issues.
Great. Kelly, this might be geared toward you. Is there any way to reconsider this is not really COVID related, I think it's more of a general question. Is there any way to reconsider the amount of supplies required by students? And certainly anybody can jump in on this question. Some consideration needs to be taken that students will need to bring all of their supplies between school and home, which does have some COVID relation to it, I guess.
It does. So in some instances, there are grade levels who feel more comfortable with kids bringing their things to and from school, and that's absolutely fine. And then in other instances, there are grade levels who feel as though they want those supplies to just stay at school so that they know when those kids are in the classroom that they're going to be coming back with those supplies. I certainly think the last thing we want to do is have major back issues and problems with kids carrying backpacks that are stuffed and filled with lots of things. So I think we have to take a look at the list. I did look at the list before they went out and before we sent them to parents. I don't see that they're going to be carrying all of those notebooks home every single night, but I think that's going to depend upon the setup that the teacher has in the classroom to see where that those things could be safely stored without having to be wiped down every single night. There are some logistical pieces as well.
And Mark, if
Great.
you don't mind, if I could just piggyback on that, because I feel like that might be a middle school question, because I've had a number of parents reach out to me with that. I would say very similarly to what Kelly just said, I did reach out to teachers to ask them to review their list and to modify them as needed. In some cases, some grade levels did, or some subject area teachers did. In other cases, I do feel that the teachers feel like what is there is help to organize the student, whether they're in the hybrid model or the virtual model. And while I understand that, students might be carrying more than they typically do to and from school, I do believe, like Kelly had just mentioned, that once we get started, teachers will be mindful of that and let students know what could be left home for maybe, this unit or this chapter, and what, needs to come on a daily basis. And then we'll also determine if there are spots within classrooms that students can keep their material there in a safe manner where they're not being touched by other students.
We also, for the first time ever, sent home a supply list. We don't normally do that at the high school, but since all of the medical recommendations are not to share items, we felt that it was important for students to have their own basic things in their backpack to use at school, and then at home to use there when the days they are home. And they're basic things: highlighters, pens, pencils, markers, things like that, calculators if they have math. Most kids will want to borrow the calculators, but that's going to present a problem. So we are requiring that list this year for safety reasons. Like, as I said, we normally don't have a supply list, but we do feel it's important this year.
Thank you very much. So this is a great topic, and I'll spearhead the conversation, and certainly if anyone wants to add to anything, feel free to. The topic is ventilation, air ventilation in classrooms. And I'll read the question as it's stated. Older schools have inadequate ventilation that do not meet current standards for outside air minimum requirements set by the CDC and referenced in ASHRAE, the International Medical Code, and the IBC codes. All are in the NJDCA website. Providing ventilation in a room is a basic requirement for new schools. Older schools may not meet the minimum set by codes, or portions of the school may not meet the current standards of ventilation. Improper ventilation will render a mask useless. Particles will remain in the air for minutes if there's no air movement. Of great concern are toilet rooms as well as classrooms. Have you consulted with an HVAC consultant or MEP engineer? A heat pump will not bring in fresh air from the exterior. Air will circulate, but the same air recirculating in a small room. Great question. Certainly the topic of conversation over the last few weeks. So a couple things. Done a lot of reading on this topic, which is important, and I'm happy if I can find it while this is going on. I'll put it in the chat room. There's a great article by Susan Miller from the University of Colorado, mechanical engineer, who focuses on the spread of infectious disease. And she talks specifically about air quality. And the reason I like the article is because it's a very simple read and very easy to understand. And obviously the key to any of these conversations is outdoor air. Outdoor air is essential, and certainly air handlers do bring in outdoor air in some of our classrooms. But there is also a need and a necessity to make sure the use of windows and doors being open, what she refers to as the old adage of using a box fan pointing out of the classroom to draw air in from the hallway so that air movement does occur. Additionally, we are making sure that all filters are meeting manufacturer specifications in terms of our air handler units. The other thing we're doing in terms of the HVAC, we have an HVAC, certified HVAC person on our staff, but we also, because this is such an important topic, have brought an HVAC company into the district to work with our HVAC person to look at every single classroom, every single air handler to make sure fresh air is coming in at a rate it's supposed to, but also to make sure that windows are functioning properly, make sure doors are functioning properly so that teachers have the ability to have multiple ways to bring outdoor air into the classroom. And that is the key, is that as was stated in the question, carbon dioxide is, if it stays stagnant and stays within a room, then carbon dioxide, the exhaling of carbon dioxide is what spreads the disease. So ultimately, that's what we need to do, is make sure that that carbon dioxide is replaced. We are also taking measures of carbon dioxide in classrooms prior to the school year beginning to get a baseline for those classrooms, because obviously there'll be no students in there. And then periodically throughout the month of September and moving forward, we will continue to monitor those classrooms with CO2 levels and see how high those CO2 levels are, and then to make just adjustments as needed and when needed. So it's definitely a hot topic for us, and something that we're going to be continue to talk about until this pandemic is over, quite frankly. Anybody want to add anything to that?
You did a good job summing it up.
Thank you. Do toilet rooms, I'm gonna let Connie handle this. This is near and dear to her heart.
Thanks, Mark.
Do toilet rooms have automatic hand washing and soap dispensers? And Connie, why don't you update them a little bit about the blowing of air to dry your hands as well, which was a recommendation from one of our medical professionals in our reopening commission.
Yeah, so we used to have the hand air dryers, and I did have a parent that strongly recommended to Mark and I last year that it was not safe, and we'd keep discussing that, and this finally we were able to remove those from use, and paper towel dispensers are placed in every bathroom. The newer areas of the building, the newer bathrooms do have the automatic soap dispensers and automatic sinks when you walk up to them and put your hand under. I believe that almost all of the sinks have been replaced to have the automatic, not all of the soap dispensers in every single bathroom, but the majority of them. We are also going to be limiting which bathrooms are used during the day and how many students are allowed in the bathrooms. They will be monitored. We cannot have students gathering in the bathrooms. They will not be safe. And if we're monitoring them, then we can have, the maintenance staff go in to clean them after use.
Great. That's the same at all the schools. So there's going to be procedures and processes that will be new to everyone, everything from one-way hallways to limited bathroom use, not limiting students to bathroom use, but having a more structured approach of who's entering a bathroom and who isn't. And those are definitely things that we continue to work on a daily basis. How will we ensure, this is really for anybody, how will we ensure that online students will be able to hear the teacher with a mask on? And will the teacher repeat questions that students in class bring up? And will the teacher be presenting their PowerPoints through Google Meets as well as live in class so that online students can see and take notes from it? And then this person recommends maybe a trial run to see what's going on. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Obviously, the teachers will have a lot of say in this, but in terms of your thoughts as principals.
Sure. We're actually working with Michael Dean and the tech department. I believe he's doing some workshops at each building for the use of the Bluetooth headphones and speakers, because this was brought up from our staff members, but also from parents that I've spoken with. So I think the idea of using those headphones with the mask is not going to present as much as a problem, and I'm hopeful that it won't, than maybe we initially thought it might. The idea, obviously, of presenting on the screen the PowerPoint, yes, is a wonderful suggestion so that students aren't, straining to see through the computer on the PowerPoint. They have it, right in front of them as the students would if they're live in school. I personally try to, whatever we're asking teachers to do, if it's a new initiative for the school year, I try it out myself. So I will be, for our opening day faculty meeting, be running a virtual option for teachers, but also one live so that we can see how it works and, work out some kinks right then and there. Obviously, if we find that something's not working throughout this whole process, we want to know about it from parents, from students, from teachers, and then we'll work out those kinks. We'll definitely, work with the tech department so that they can give us some other ideas that might be more helpful, that might work a little bit better.
Great.
And do you want to hear from the elementary school?
Not really. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I do, we have a range of ages, obviously, pre-K through fourth grade. And so in my reopening plan, I gave samples of what a virtual day would look like compared to in-person learning. And it's really going to be a combination of live streaming, follow-up activities, as well as instructional videos, teachers checking in with students. So it's going to be really a combination of all of that. And as far as I think of the voice, once our teachers go through training and they have the training with the technology, even wearing the mask, it should be clear. But if it's not, that's where we need your feedback, and that's communication is going to be key. And obviously the student can speak up on their behalf and say, really difficult for me to hear you right now, so that, it's happening simultaneously as the lesson's being delivered.
Great. Has there been any thought about pushing back the start time of the day? This is a great question, but one that, we had the committee that was investigating the start time of the high school specifically, and the other schools as well. That committee made a recommendation based on cost of that we would not be able to move the starting time. And as for this time period, one of the things that everybody should understand is that our district with busing is tied with Millstone as well. And so being able to push back a starting time for one school affects all. And it's something that the challenge with our district, and this is one of the reasons we love our district, is geographically between Millstone and Upper Freehold, it's an enormous area of space for buses to cover. So it's not as simple as, well, let's just move the starting time back and we'll rearrange buses. It actually ends up to being almost a $2 million cost extra for extra busing. And during this time, it would be the same thing. If we were to move it back and we moved every school back, it would be a challenge for us because we'd have to be in sync with Millstone, which we want to be. And geographically, it's just very hard to do. Will Newell students who have opted for all remote learning have their own teachers so they can build a sense of community with their virtual and hybrid class or virtual class? That's what it says.
So our 100% virtual students as of right now, and it's really been a numbers game, making sure that we're trying our best to balance cohorts, group 1, group 2, as well as looking at how many parents opted for the 100% virtual model. And so unfortunately, we do not have enough teachers to pool to say, okay, this teacher is going to be the virtual teacher for third grade. And so our students will be remaining in their homerooms, even though they're 100% virtual, and they will still have direct contact with that classroom teacher, with the students in that class, by participating in check-ins, morning meetings, and different activities. And this is the hope that also, we want to reconnect with all of our kids, whether they're virtual or whether they're in front of us, 2 to 3 days per week, depending upon the schedule. So it's really important that we reconnect with all of our kids, and those children who are 100% virtual will in fact be connected to their homeroom teacher and a homeroom class and see them on a regular basis.
Great. This was a question. I'm trying to think if this is high school or middle school, but how does the school plan to work with band students that are learning virtually, will the student hear from the band teacher prior to school opening? This might be a middle school question because the high school band had started already.
Well, Mark, there is just, if students are in marching band, they started. If they are in a symphonic band class, right. So, if it is a high school question regarding symphonic band, and if you're a virtual student only, I mean, Mr. Heck will be in touch. We are going to have a day on September 3rd where all the virtual students will come to pick up all of their materials, their books and materials that they need to be able to learn from home. And the teachers will have the opportunity to get them what they need at that time. And it will be the same for that band class, if that's what they were referring to. I'm not sure.
And I don't, it's possible that it's referring to us. However, we are not going to run band as we typically have in the past as a result of kind of the guidelines in place currently. So what we will be doing is we will be running, and I will say that the same holds true for chorus, so we won't have a chorus class, but we are going to work with students and parents and our teachers, Mr. Hanna and Mrs. Bartlett, on running lessons for band and chorus. They would be individual lessons, and they would be with parent permission. And that information will be coming out within the first couple of weeks of school so that we could look to see what students would be interested, and then we can go ahead and get that information out to parents.
Great. A couple more questions they have here. So will any accommodations be made to which group AHS students fall into based on their last name? For example, if a student previously was picked up by another student who will now be attending AHS on different days due to the last name categorization or the other transportation issues.
Unfortunately, we're just absolutely not able to do that under any circumstances. In order to keep the schedules, balanced to the best of our ability, that a tremendous amount of work has gone into assuring that we can socially distance students. And if the class does, the alphabetical breakout still seems like there's too many students, we're going to have to move them to a larger room. So we just cannot have more students at this point going to different models. There was been lots of opportunity to pick which model parents wanted, but we have no flexibility with that A through L or M through Z.
The one thing that everybody also needs to understand, and we have looked at the numbers on this one, that remember on November 13th and before November 13th, we would obviously send this out to everybody again. They'll have another choice to make of whether to come back in person or stay virtual or go virtual at that point. If there is a situation that a lot more people come back, we have to be prepared, knowing numbers of what that looks like when people come back to in-person instruction. And if we move people around, that will be a more difficult task and almost an impossible task to be able to predict size of rooms. Because the worst thing that could happen, imagine this, we bring kids back on November 13th to go in person, and we have to flip-flop those kids that we move now back to their old days. It would just cause complete confusion and craziness. So
I would just like to add that the only exception to that is we have made a commitment as a district to keep families together, so that there are times when family members may have different last names, living in the same household, and then of course those are the only exceptions that we have made. And Kelly, Steph, and I have worked carefully together to work with all of our families that involved to make sure that we had them on. They were all able to go on the same day. That is the only exception to that rule.
Connie, now that VOTEC is virtual until November 9th, I think that's Mercer County VOTEC, correct?
Yes, only Mercer. Right now, Monmouth is still going on, they're going in person.
A change in expectations before our deadline to make determinations on virtual only courses. Will this student be allowed to switch to virtual learning only if they originally had chosen hybrid due to busing restrictions? We have I know all three of us have been trying very hard to work with all of our families to meet their needs. And even though the deadline was now more than 2 weeks ago,
we've still, I know I myself have still been accepting students as of today, but at some point we do have to stop, and we cannot open school unless we have a set schedule and we know how many students are in every room to make sure that they are socially distanced. So we would ask that everyone stick with their original plan. If it is a change because of vocational school, that student would still have the ability to log on to their vocational school classes from here, from study hall. For example, if they're here, or the day, they'll be home 2 or 3 days a week, where they could log on from there. The days they're here, they can go to study hall and log on. So we will work with you to try to make that work. But if there's any specific problem, then, just please reach out to me and we'll work it out.
One more question from the list, and then I'll go into some of the chat room. What if a student is unsure? And I can answer this question quickly. If a student is unsure, they could send their child on the bus and they drive them in several days a week. Someone is typing, by the way, so if you could mute your screen, that would be wonderful. I can actually mute you as well, which I just did. Is someone unsure if they should send their child on the bus and they drive them in several days, a week, to test things out? Will they lose their spot on the bus? It's a great question, and certainly a question that is a fairly easy answer. So people who are not subscription busing students, so students who are beyond the 2 or 2.5 mile threshold for busing, those spots are on that bus for the whole year. There's no change. If a person is all virtual, they still have a spot on the bus, because now the bus will not stop at your house every day, but because we will inform the bus companies which students are going to be coming in. But they will, if you decide to go in person after November 13th, you will still have that bus available to you. So busing will always be provided for those who are beyond the subscription busing. Subscription busing will be open for everyone. However, there will be a time when subscription busing fills a bus and we're not able to add any more people to a specific run. So that's where subscription busing comes into play. We have to go by numbers for that in terms of who's allowed to be on and who isn't. I did post, that concludes our questions from the Excel sheet, but just to talk about a couple more things before we close. There are a couple questions here, and this is to the 3 principals. This is more of a suggestion. Love the suggestion. A suggestion for virtual students. Please have teachers record their lessons so that virtual students can review the lesson. You don't absorb in the same way as in person, so being able to go back to review is very helpful. That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a great point. The other was, will there be breaks to take off the mask? I answered that and just said mask breaks will be given at various times, depending on the day and depending on the teacher. Most mask breaks, well, actually mask breaks will have to be outdoors and given at different times. Here's a good one. How will mask wearing be enforced on the bus? Precautions can be taken in school, but won't work if kids aren't wearing the mask. It's a great question. I can certainly take a stab at it. Does anybody want to take a stab at it from this group?
Sure, I can as well. I think we would handle it just as we would any other behavioral issue on the bus. We'll get that information from the bus driver. We'll talk to that student. If it becomes a habit where a child is continuously making the choice not to wear his or her mask, that would then be a more serious issue and involve a conversation with the parent and possibly removal from the bus for a short amount of time so that a child really understands that he or she needs to take it very seriously in order to keep him or herself safe and his or her peers.
I would also add, just as a reminder, and this is important, this is why I'm reminding everybody again, the buses won't look the same in terms of, 50 kids at a time, which for a bus driver can be chaotic to enforce rules. Buses, if you remember, about 25% of our district population chose virtual. About 37% will come each day. And of that 37%, according to the survey that we put out about busing earlier on, there's a substantial amount of people who will be driving their kids to school. So we expect the buses to be filled perhaps about 25 to 30% of the kids that are typically on it, which will then, and some less than that. We have a bus driver meeting. This will be the top priority for us to make sure that that is what they are doing. And you can be assured that all students will be spoken to in general about the importance of mask wearing while they're in this public setting of a school, and the sort of the responsibility we all have for each other, and that we're a team in all of this. So any other questions or any other comments from our principals? I'm sorry.
I just want to, thank all of our parents for the signing on today and for all their support that they give us each day in going through this monumental task. So difficult, but we are all committed to assure the safety of our students and to open our schools.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Cal.
I was going to say that it certainly is a team effort here, and parents are a big part of our team with helping the students understand the safety piece that's connected, especially at the elementary level. There's going to be a lot of modeling and teaching, handling with masks and how to do that, but we also need that stuff, those conversations to be happening at home as well. We appreciate your support.
And I was just going to say the same thing. I truly believe we're a team, and this is now more than ever a team effort. And we really do appreciate your support and the feedback and the suggestions. And I think, as Mark said, it's not necessarily going to be perfect, on the very first few days of school. And, we expect you to let us know if things are not working, or continue to share if you have some concerns. Because we really want to do right by you and our students. So, thank you in advance for that.
And one final thought from me too, and this is echoing what you just said, Steph, is at any time, if a parent has an idea or thought about something and how it's done, and I've said this at a number of other conversations too, share it. We've all never been through a pandemic before, and certainly we can say now that we've never been through a pandemic when we have in-person instruction. So ultimately, that is something that we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can. And any type of suggestions, articles to read, ideas that you have, even after school starts, reach out to the principals, let them know, hey, this is a great idea. We actually had something from someone earlier in the week that was a great idea that we're going to implement. So that's always welcome. And the second thing is, I want to make sure that everybody knows another thing that our principal said: how it looks on day 1 will be better on day 30. And that's something that you have to, I hope you can all understand, that from inside the classroom and beyond, our expectations for our teachers, we have awesome teachers and awesome staff. They're all wonderful, and they will do anything for kids. And quite honestly, it's very difficult for educators who don't like to do things that they, in a different way, in the sense that they don't want to be, but they don't want to not be good at something. They all want to do what's best for kids. And so with that in mind, they're all doing something now that will be new to them in some way or another. And I would ask all parents and all of our community to be patient with our teachers and staff. They're doing their absolute best, and also be patient with us. We will do everything we can to make this the best thing for kids. Be assured that every decision we make will be in the best interest of the safety and well-being of everyone involved. So, for that, I thank you. And we had about 105 people at the height of this meeting tonight, which is great. But keep in mind, the principals still have their frequently asked questions that are posted on their websites. And so if a question comes up that isn't answered tonight, or that you have tomorrow or a week from now, feel free to throw it up there, and the principal will look at it and answer it. So with that being said, thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Embley. Thank you, Mrs. Huggins. Thank you, Mrs. Foligno, for your leadership in the planning of this pandemic response, and also in your efforts and passion to do what's right for kids. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mark.
Have a good evening.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care, everybody.